All right.
Genetics. Okay. Hi everybody, I'm Nathan Roberts. Many of you remember me from the County Commission campaign. For those of you who don't, Wood County resident, lived here about a dozen years. Before that, I was an engineer, lived in Georgia my whole life, with the exception of a year I spent in Florida doing contract work as a plant engineer. I chose to move my family up here because I wanted to find a place where my kids would say yes ma'am and no ma'am, you know, and yes sir, no sir. I like the South. I'm a textile engineer by education. I'm a financial advisor by trade. And I always wanted to have a place, I guess, where the land is like it is here. My father's family is from Polk County and from Gordon County, and this is home to me. So I came up here and brought my family. I'm a single parent. I have 3 children. They're currently in both Floyd County and Rome City schools. And like many people with children, you feel like you have a certain amount of control, hopefully, over what's in your household. You know, you set your rules and you hope to follow them. And I have less control over what happens in my neighborhood. I have some good neighbors, but that's kind of beyond it. Within my city, I try to stay involved, and within my county, I gave it a shot. Nationally, I only had 1 vote, and apparently the majority of Americans disagreed with me. But hopefully we can fix that in 2016. But going on that, looking at things, I'm a financial advisor, and I look at numbers. Numbers are what I enjoy. And it seems that the further we get away from ourselves, the less influence we have, both over how our vote is cast and how our dollar is spent. I read something actually today, I was kind of studying up for this. 80% of the aid we give to Ghana, for example, which is an African nation, 80% of it is wasted, or whether it's corruption or graft or just incompetence. Only 20% is actually effective. On average, I think it's about 30 to 35% of foreign aid is actually effective. I can give you the poll numbers on what the percentage of what nationally people think our tax money is being used for and what we actually expect it to be used for, or when we send it there. But for the first time in our nation's history, or since they began the polling, the number now is below 51% in terms of whether it's effective or how effective it is. So we're actually past the threshold. The majority of Americans most Americans feel that most of their dollar they send to the federal government is wasted. And that matters. And that matters because it kind of coalesces, it kind of brings to the point that as we get further away, like I said, less control, but local control is best. So the National Party, for example, and I printed this up today, we've got 62 pages, of which I think about 54 of it, and that's the national platform. And I hope we can all agree on that, because that's what we're agreeing to, kind of camera there, by being Republicans. We're agreeing to the national platform. And I'm not sure how much you follow that or how much you read, but there's some things in there I may or may not take exception to. I appreciate the fact that after the first page, they do have credit given to our founding fathers. They give a dedication. They say, with appreciation and reverence for the wisdom of the framers of the United States Constitution, who gave us a republic, as Benjamin Franklin cautioned, if we can keep it. And I think the fact that the credit is given and that there's a certain amount of respect to the framers of our Constitution. And I consider myself a constitutional conservative. And I think that matters especially now. There is fracture within our party. There's fracture both nationally, as we're going to see in the primaries in 2016, and there's this past year, I think that became apparent, with some people staying involved and some people dropping off as their candidates were not chosen in primaries and onward. And I hope we can avoid that on the local level, because locally I think we have some control. And that's what I want to emphasize if I become chair of the GOP here in Floyd County. I think local control is best, and I think that my experience here locally would be an asset there. I became involved when I first moved to town, joined the chamber, went through Leadership Rome. I'm a small business owner. Like I said, financial advisor, first with Edward Jones, and then I went independent. After Leadership Rome, I was appointed to some committees, Transportation Citizen Advisory, and then Planning Commission. I've served on that for the last 9 years. And I've made some ties in this community, and I get a lot of feedback. And last year, during the summer, during my campaign, I knocked on a lot of doors, and I got a lot more feedback. And I think that my ties in this community give me a perspective that would be helpful in growing our party on what matters. And I'll take a side here to mention that the young Republicans in particular, I don't think you understand or appreciate some of the, I'll say notoriety, but the attention that you've received just for actually showing up in the most recent City Commission chicken battle. And I can't let that go unmentioned. And the reason why is because it was still in the paper this morning. If you read, I'm not going to mention the pun, but in the letter to the editor, somebody actually commended the Rome News for their coverage of it, saying that they had it right. The Rome News editorial page agreed with the perspective that the young Republicans were basically championing at those meetings. That doesn't happen often, by the way, so we need to recognize it when it does. But what happened there is that young Republicans supported a local person with an issue they had with a local government, and that actually gained us some attention, and I think in the end will gain us some members because we were active. So I'm encouraging everyone to not necessarily expect the party to be active. I'm encouraging everyone to be active themselves. This is not something where it has to be a party mission. This is basically if the counterpart to liberty is personal responsibility, we need to step up. And I would expect that from members, and I would expect that our party would champion that as well. Going back as far as government control and basically federal waste, and I apologize for the side for the chicken fight. But anyway, there's basically a lot of overlap there. But we don't have to look so far as the federal government to see it. We can see it at the state level, and we can even see it at the local level. And what I recommend is that we locally get involved with some issues that matter. And that's, I think, how we're going to grow the party. Locally here, right now, the Planning Commission, and I got some calls the other day, the last meeting we had talked about corridor overlays and improvements. That's going to be on the radio here in the next few weeks, and the meeting will be covered by the newspaper probably next month. The corridor improvements, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say overlay. It's not an overlay. It is an improvement. But this is something that affects the property values and the people affected. This is an issue of property rights. It matters. The party should take a stand on that. The party should take a stand here locally on certain, I'll say legislation, but on ordinances that affect us, as we should expect our state representatives, our delegation to the Capitol to take issues on that. Going back to the Georgia GOP, the national GOP, like I said, 54 pages. The Georgia GOP actually passed some resolutions last year. The local party needs to follow up with that. The absence, transparency without accountability is worthless. We need to have some accountability. The national platform talks about that education is a responsibility of the individual, but then they say that they need to make the internet family friendly. I know what my kids are doing on the internet. If we actually take personal responsibility at what it should mean, then that's my responsibility, and I shouldn't expect the government to do that for me. The government is not, I don't want it to be a nanny state. That falls on me. And there's a lot of things like that are in the national platform, which we, if we are actually responsible, should address. In the state of Georgia, I think that Chuck Hufstetler has introduced, or at least co-sponsored, maybe some legislation about sales tax being used instead of property taxes. That's basically half the budget in the state of Georgia. 43% is individual income tax. Sales tax makes up 27%. Right now, if the sales tax rate is at 4%, you can see what it would have to be to replace it altogether. I think that actually having a consumption-based tax would be good. If the party has a stand on that, we need to recommend and encourage that. Resolutions were adopted last year by the Georgia GOP. Requested resolution for partisan elections for all elected offices in Georgia. If you feel that party matters, you need to actually support this locally. You may not be able to run for a nonpartisan position because you're not going to get an R or D by your name on the ballot, but you can still run as a Republican. And that's something we need to encourage people that are interested in serving on the city school board and city commission. You can run as a Republican. It may not be on the ballot, but that doesn't mean you can't tell people those are the principles that you will follow once you're in office. I think that matters. Georgia Code here locally. We need to encourage our delegation to make changes that affect us here. Again, right now, Floyd County Schools is experiencing budget cuts. You have an example where you've got 19 pre-K classrooms in the county. Of those pre-K classrooms, they usually require 2 instructors. Benefits are paid by some, and this is in direct competition to what a private enterprise and private businesses do within our county. I think if they wanted to cut positions, they cut 119 of them, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not saying we need to cut all pre-K programs, but 38 of those 119 may be pre-K teachers, which it's like I said before, competition with private business in our county. And we're subsidizing that, and it's at an expense. The county loses money on their pre-K program every year. So there are specific examples where we need to be involved, and that the local party needs to be vocal, we need to be active, and we need to take a stand. So I'm encouraging you to actually consider to stepping up, to actually having your voice heard on things that affect you, not nationally so much, not statewide. All those things matter, but every day here in the county where we live. So ask for your support on March 9th. If you have any questions, I'm welcome. Thank you.